Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast, brought to you by Modern Well, a beautiful woman-centered collaborative workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm your host, April Seifert, psychologist, entrepreneur, and self-proclaimed life experience junkie. Each week, I will introduce you to a different woman who is succeeding and inspiring others in one way or another. We'll dive into her story, her successes, failures, and the lessons she has learned along the way, all with the goal of inspiring you to listen to that inner voice who keeps reminding you that there is something you want to take action on. You are so much more capable and powerful than you give yourself credit for. Inside of you is a woman on fire. Let's let her out and see what happens. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. My name is April Seifert, and I am your friend and your guide on this amazing journey as we explore some of the world's most inspiring women and the awesome work that they're doing. This week is no different than that, and I am so thrilled to bring to you an amazing woman named Samantha Moe. She is the founder of a parent coaching program called Mad to Glad, and her interview is incredible. But before I dive into that, I want to give one quick plug really quickly. So at the end of each of my episodes, I ask you guys to pop over to iTunes and either drop me a rating or a review. There's a link always in the description of each of my episodes that allows you to link right over to iTunes and do that. And I want to talk for just 60 seconds about why that is so important to me. Now, for those of you who aren't in a digital or online space, I'm extremely new to it. I did not know this stuff until really recently. But if you're new to the digital or online space or you're not in it at all, one of the things that really drives how visible this content gets is how many ratings and how many reviews it gets. So the more a podcast, whether it's mine or anyone else's, is both downloaded, obviously that makes sense, right? The more downloaded a podcast is, the more popular. It signals to iTunes and other places that the more popular it is. But another thing that signals popularity and another thing that helps podcasts get seen is ratings and reviews. So the more of them that I get, the more of you that I hear from, not only does it help give me feedback and help me find the right women and find the right content that you want to hear about, but it also helps me share these amazing women's stories with more people. So if you have been listening to the podcast or you listen to this episode and you really enjoy it, you have no idea how much impact that 60 seconds or 30 seconds of just clicking that link in the episode description, popping over to iTunes and leaving me a rating and review. You have no idea the impact that every single one of those has. Every time I get a new review, I see my podcast move in the rankings. So if you ever want one single person's vote to count, this is one of those times. So thank you to everybody who has reviewed. Thank you in advance for anyone else who does review as a result of this little plea. I just wanted to put that out there, say thank you, and let you guys know that I absolutely appreciate every single one of them. All right, so this week, I mentioned you're going to meet an amazing woman named Samantha Moe. She is an incredible parent coach. She has incredible content to share with us about, there's some practical things about 3 different ways that you can relate better to your kids so that you can go from, a state that might be, more heated and anxiety provoking to something that is more calm and enjoyable at home. There's definitely some kid-centered practical applications there, which I know was really valuable for me, and I took a ton away from it as well. But like so many of the women who I interview, above and beyond the content area that they focus on, there is so much value to just us as human beings and how we approach our own goals. And Samantha shares incredible value with that. She shares incredible value around what it means to live a life where you're living so that I get up early so that I can have a cup of coffee before my kids get up so that I can be in the right frame of mind when they get up so that I can be a better parent so that I can handle when, like the so that sort of build up on a day-to-day basis and moment to moment throughout the day. She gives incredible tips about how to handle that in our own lives. And so how can we basically take care of our own psychological situation over and above taking care of other people? There's also an incredible story in her interview about reinventing herself. She's done such an incredible job cultivating the expertise that she has and the career that she has. And I know you're going to get a lot out of that. And then also, she talks a lot about a situation where she found herself in a position with a kid where she had no idea what to do. And how she handled it from there is really eye-opening and wonderful. So I'm excited for you guys to hear this content. And I have to say, please stick around to the end of this episode and catch her power song. Oh my God, the motivating contribution she made to our playlist is just awesome. I was just listening to it and I was getting tears in my eyes. So highly suggest you stick around to the end of this episode. And I am so excited for you to meet Ms. Samantha Moe. Well, hey, you guys, welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. My name is April Seifert and I am your host. And I am sitting across the table from an amazing woman who has not only a great personal story, but she has some background knowledge and experience and a content area that she works within that is incredibly useful for so many people. And I'm so thrilled. So we've been trying to set this interview up for a little while, and I'm so excited that it's finally happening. So I'd love for you all to meet Samantha Moe. Welcome.
Thank you, April. So glad to be here.
Awesome. So I have about 1,000 questions rattling around in my mind that I want to ask you today, because we've had the pleasure of sitting down and chit-chatting a little bit, and I know a bit about you. But before we get into that, help my audience get to know you a little bit and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, happy to. So by trade, I am a speech language pathologist. So what that means is I have my master's degree in communication disorders. And in 2004, I left cold, snowy Minnesota to work at my first job at a school for children with autism in Southern California. And the thing about doing this work with kids with autism was I was really gung-ho. I was bright and shiny, right out of school, and I loved kids. And I thought, I'm going to do great at this. Growing up, I was always the kid on the playground who would take the first grader who was standing off to the side of the swings by himself, and I would take him by the hand and come play with him. So I have this history of loving children, bringing kids together, drawing out their gifts. And in my first year out of grad school, I remember needing to work with 8-year-old Charlie, who didn't have social skills. So he didn't have friends. He had some loud pitched screaming noises that he would do in the middle of class. And my job as a speech pathologist was to take him from the computer lab over into my speech therapy office in order to work on friendship skills. Well, true to form with many kids who have autism, we never made it to my office because halfway down that hallway, Charlie had a meltdown. And meltdowns for kids who have autism look different than neurotypical kids. It's with Charlie, he was laying on the floor screaming. It went on and on and on for 20 minutes. He yelled hateful, hurtful things if I wanted to take it personally. Things like, I hate you, this is stupid, this is dumb, I want to go back. And I remember looking down at him with the sweat dripping down my back, knowing I needed to do something to get him out of the hallway. And I thought, I have no idea what to do here. So with a 6-year degree in the field of child development, I felt that bright-eyed and bushy-tailed feeling went away really quickly. And so eventually I am not ashamed to say that I bribed Charlie and brought him back to the computer lab. And I went back into my speech therapy office alone. I closed the door. I shut off the lights. I put my head in my hands and I thought, maybe I chose the wrong job. And it was a really important moment for me because while I was studious in my college days, it was this moment that really, it's where the rubber hit the road. And I realized that if I truly wanted to draw out Charlie's gifts, I needed to understand something that I was never taught. So I started looking for it. And I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew that there had to be something out there as to how to help kids who are really intense. I looked at brain science, at sensory integration, at play therapy, at behavioral management, at all of these different areas, and mindfulness because I had a passion around it. And rather than giving up, because it was such a large amount of information, after a while, I noticed a pattern. And I noticed that for any child, no matter how intense they are, if we want to connect with them and we want to get through to them and we want to get good listening and cooperation skills to keep us motivated to keep interacting with them, but also, of course, to help them develop childhood skills, their brain needs two things. It has to feel calm and it has to feel safe. And so my background was being fortunate enough and discouraged enough to put me on that path to understand how to create a blueprint to help kids with autism, with ADHD, with sensory processing disorder, fetal alcohol exposure, like any combination of letters that creates a medical diagnosis, how to help their brains feel calm and safe so they can listen, they can cooperate, and you can draw out their gifts and enjoy spending time together.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So those of you who are listening, you can probably understand now why I said what I said before, that I was so excited to meet Samantha because so many of us are parents, so many of us. And I just had to smile when you were saying there's this child who's laying on the floor screaming. And your first thought was, I have no idea what to do here. I want you, if you're like in your car, honk your horn or something like that right now, if you have been in that situation. Because like, I know with my 2.5-year-old, I definitely have been multiple times, and with other people's kids too. And that's even more awkward because they aren't yours and there's all that complexity there. But we've all been in that situation where we've had this child and to some extent their behavior feels a little bit mysterious. It feels like I don't understand what might have caused a reaction to the degree that I'm seeing. And I don't know what to do the right thing, because ultimately all we want to do is do the right thing. Now, I'm curious for you to dive a little bit deeper into something you said. You mentioned, I'm just like going right at the heart of the matter because I'm so curious about it. You mentioned this notion that you help people, or you help kids, or help people figure out how to keep kids' brains feeling calm and safe. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, why is that the key? How did you figure that out? Where did that all come from?
Oh, that's such a good question. Where did that come from? That's such a good question. So how do we help kids' brains to feel calm? See, what I was doing originally that was really exhausting as a child professional was I was using external strategies. So I was problem solving in the normal way that my brain knew how. It was, oh, Charlie doesn't like leaving the computer lab. Maybe I can get him at a different time of day. Maybe I can bribe him to earn screen time if he gets to my office. Maybe I just need to drag him down the hallway and that will get him to listen and it will like teach him the lesson because I'm the authority figure. Like I was thinking about it in such normal, what I thought, like intuitive or instinctive ways. And where the information came from was studying alongside other professionals and observing really carefully what they were doing. So not only was I looking in research of the areas I described, but I was working side by side and extending my work days to go observe occupational therapists who specialize in sensory processing disorder.
Yeah.
I would study with people who would talk about nutrition in the brain and the effects of carbohydrates and sugars. And the information emerged after just really deep study. And when I look at, I don't just believe children have gifts, I believe all of us have gifts. And I believe that I was put on this earth to recognize patterns and help make children's lives better because I love kids so much.
That's awesome. I want to go in about 4 different directions. Something that I think is really interesting is you started the work that you're doing by working with kids with autism, working with kids with sensory disorders, and other, I like how you put it, like other combinations of letters that, earn you a diagnosis. Something that I found in at least the field of psychology is that there definitely are tools and techniques and methods and theory that work extremely well to help people who have diagnoses. So they have something that's happening that has, reached a clinical level that has gotten them a diagnosis. There are techniques that work really well. What's interesting is these same techniques also work extremely well for people who haven't reached that level, who maybe have mild symptoms of something, or they would be what people, in sort of lay casual terms would say, oh yeah, these are like normal people who don't have blah, blah, blah going on. And I'm curious about the way that you work with kids. Do you see some of these tools and techniques working along that continuum? Because at least, like I said, in psych, that's definitely the case. There are tools that you can use as a person without a diagnosis that will definitely enhance your life and your experience. And I have a feeling that that's the case here.
Yeah, absolutely. So when parents come and work with me, we have a program called the Mad to Glad Blueprint. And they say, will this work with my child who's more of a harmonious and pleasing temperament, and give us some tools to draw out their gifts and help them have positive self-esteem? And I say, absolutely. But it was really designed for parents that have the intense kids, because what we're finding is with the intense kids, the reason their temperaments are so kind of like they want to rule the roost. Mm-hmm. They'll listen to an instruction as long as it was their idea in the first place. Mm-hmm. Or their reactions are atypical. They're just a little bit too high, sometimes a lot too high for the situation. If they wanted that last banana for breakfast and oops, you ate it before they came down the stairs,
right?
It can be
that never happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So these tools that we work with are specifically designed to do what I call calm the fire in the brain, because some kids are more fiery. They're more intense. They are born that way. And the underlying neurology with this is that the fight or flight stress response is overactive. Mm-hmm. So we see that in really little babies who are colicky, like they're just in kind of a survival mode. They're not feeling that ease inside. That self-soothing button just needs extra pressing in order for it to actually start working. So with these techniques, I've learned to become a really good detective and find out, based on sometimes color changes in a child's face. If their face goes pale or their ears grow red or their eyeballs dilate, sometimes that can be the sign of the fight or flight mode kicking in. So we want to learn how to calm that fire, how to calm the fire in the brain. So with kids like Charlie, who was more intense and did have an autism diagnosis and a sensory processing disorder, for him, it wasn't about, again, like the external strategy of bribe him or just don't take him out of the computer lab. It was, how can we set his body up in a way where it's not as reactive and triggering? It becomes very proactive. It's not about what do I do in this moment when he's melting down in the hallway. It's what kind of input can we give his muscles and his joints so a calm signal goes to his brain so that we don't step over the red line with a small instruction that we've just given.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like so many aspects of life. I mean, you take it over into just general health, right? There's smaller things that you can do on a preventive basis that have such a massive impact, that are, like I said, smaller things that have a big impact compared to what you can do once you've already reached a crisis situation or a more acute situation. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that. So some of these preventive things, especially because, I'll be totally honest, I'm right in the thick of it, right? I have this 2.5-year-old who is, for all intents and purposes, has no diagnoses. She's the most healthy, great little kid, but she does have strong-willed moments. She does throw tantrums. She does have all that stuff that kids have. And so I think your content area and your expertise and knowledge is so helpful for so many people because, many of us have had, we've all been toe to toe with that 2-year-old. We know what that's like.
Yeah. And it's so easy to think about the 6-year-old who's digging in her heels to look at her and think, oh, she's being defiant. And as a parenting coach, I like to always ask the question, and how did you respond to that?
Yes.
Because oftentimes what parents will reflect back to me is they're like, well, I'm equally defiant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
And I keep saying like, okay, well, this strong-willed blah, blah will help her someday because she's going to be this like strong embodied person. But like at some point we just have to put our shoes on and we just need to go. Like
right.
At some point we just need to keep moving with our day.
Right. And I'm going to share 2 or 3 tips in just a moment here. And I just want to create a bridge from a conversation we've had before this interview, which is about positive psychology and positive parenting.
I love it so much.
And it's so easy to say, the kid, from my perspective, when we don't have a child in the room with us right now, it's easy for us to say a child who's digging in their heels. When we look at it from a strengths-based perspective, there's a sense of confidence in there.
Yeah.
There's a sense of perseverance in there, which will serve kids well at some point. But when you need to get to work on time and just get out the door, it's not helpful.
Right.
So let's talk about what you can do. So I like to use really simple language. And please understand that this simple language is not because I'm trying to speak to a 4th grader. It's because with my brain, when I'm with a child who's defiant or disrespectful, when I think of this language, it changes my behavior.
Okay. I like that.
So we got to keep it simple. So the first thing to know is, hey, if you are in an intense moment, your child's brain is on fire. So what do? Well, there's a little scientist in the brain, basically, that is gathering data to understand how to respond. That is a kid's job. The kid's job is that the scientist collects all this data and the brain becomes what it is exposed to. So if you flip your lid 100% of the time when you want your child to put on her shoes, then what happens is the scientist gets a message of, oh, here's what happens when we need to put our shoes on. We should flip our lids. So when we understand that there are mirror neurons in the brain, and I'm holding up my hand as if I have like a little hand mirror, mirror neurons reflect the state that another person is in. So it's the most impactful, the thing you're about to hear, and parents hate hearing it. The most impact you can have is to stay calm in the moment of fire.
I mean, I love that. Okay, I'm totally going to interject because the mirror neuron thing, if this is a new concept to people, it is fascinating and worth going down the Google hole for because it's so interesting. But you can absolutely see them at work. I mean, today, you can watch this happen today. Just go up to anybody, whether it's your kid who, is old enough to like look at you and, speak a little bit, or to another adult and just look them directly in the eye and yawn and watch what they do.
Yeah.
They are more times than not, they're going to yawn. And it's just because their brain sees what you're doing. It fires as though they're doing it and it makes them more likely to yawn. It's crazy.
Right. And it's not intentional. So even we can think about babies. If your 6-month-old is sitting in a high chair at the breakfast table and you are bringing a spoon of oatmeal to your mouth, not her mouth, what is she going to do?
Yeah.
She's going to open her mouth. You know this. I mean, it's like such an obvious.
Well, and that's why, too, you're feeding your kid and you're bringing the spoon to her mouth and you're opening your own mouth. And if you think you're not doing it, have your spouse take or your partner or whoever is in the room with you, take a video of you while you're feeding your kid. Your mouth is open every single time.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So those are mirror neurons. So when we think about kids, for kids who are more intense, we want to set the example of calm because they don't have that calm, self-soothing button that's easy to access in their body yet. So you might have a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old whose body isn't good at that yet. And you're like, oh my gosh, my 10-year-old should be able to brush his teeth and walk up the stairs on his own without me holding his hand getting up there. But what we know is that sometimes they don't have the organization or the calm in their body to be able to just follow that simple instruction. So number 1, calm your own fire.
I love that.
So the second strategy is becoming aware of what adds fire in the first place. Now, you as a listener might already be thinking about, oh my gosh, my child was born with intensity. I could see it in her eyes when she was born, or maybe they were hard to soothe and fall asleep, or maybe they needed your constant attention and wanted to play with you and they were hanging on your leg all the time. So if that was true, they might be wired to have a little bit more intensity. And so what we want to know is what adds to that intensity. Because the way the brain works is we can either add to the fire or we can calm the fire. And here's the beauty about being a child development specialist. Just like every single one of you have learned to grow in your career or in your personal life, parenting is no different. Everybody talks about, I wish there was a manual. Well, the neuroscience manual, in a sense, says you can add to the fire or you can calm the fire. So we're going to do a little experiment. I want you to listen to my voice for like 20 seconds here and pay attention to what it feels like in your body. Now, I'm looking right at April right now. So April, please close your eyes. She's not driving. If you're driving, keep your eyes open and pay attention to what it feels like in your body as you hear me right now. No. Stop it. Knock it off. Don't. Every day no, I said no. And open your eyes. Starting phrases with a no is a hidden landmine. So at Mad to Glad, we created a free email report on 10 hidden landmines because there are landmines built into our everyday language and actions that add fuel to the fire. So what did you notice inside of your body, April, as you heard this experiment?
Well, it felt really, it definitely made me feel a little bit anxious. Like, oh my gosh, this is really jarring. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. And so how did you know it was jarring? What did your body do?
I mean, I got that little tinge of, oh God, kind of like dread anxiety that you get. I mean, it's a smaller version of it, right?
Right.
But I know I'm in a safe place, but it was a smaller version of it. But that's definitely shades of the same feeling that you would get if you were actually really afraid or anxious.
Right. And you're nailing it. So there are common responses we have to hidden landmines that give us evidence that fire was just released. So you might feel a sense of tightening in your chest or your neck or your belly. So you feel tension build up. Some of you might have tuned me out like a teenager, like, whatever, I'm just not listening to her. Some of you might have felt the fight response, like, don't tell me what to do, even though I feel
like you might have just been my kid right there.
Yes, you have self-recognition and family recognition with this exercise. And then for other kids, they have what I call the wilting response, which is like, we see kids as little as 5 coming home from school and we say, why did you get that bad color on the behavior chart? And they say, I'm just a bad kid.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
Yes. So I don't mean to break your heart. I mean to increase awareness and know that, parenting is like any other growth area. When you understand, when you grow your skills around it, you can become more successful. So you don't have to add to the fire.
I love that. Okay, so we've got calm your own fire and then think about what adds to the fire in the first place. Awesome. What's next?
And then let's do another one. So what we know about intense kids and strong-willed kids is that they are wired to like excitement. So you can't just be calm in the moment when your daughter won't put her shoes on and expect that that's going to be enough. Right? She's not going to be like, okay, Mom, cool. Thanks for not yelling. I'm going to put my shoes on. What we need to do is we need to create inner inspiration. So where does that come from for little kids? Well, it's a brain game again. So what happens when fire in the brain is triggered, adrenaline and cortisol is released, and there's physiological changes. The heart pumps faster, the blood rushes, the breath grows shallow. This was important. You know this if a bear was chasing us in the woods back when we lived in the caveman days. But we don't want kids responding to us as if we're a bear and all we asked them to do was to put on their shoes. So instead, what we need to do is we have to give them that burst of espresso, that energetic excitement that they're looking for. And here's where praise comes in. So here's where saying something like, great job, shoes are on, so independent, look at you, you're fast like a bunny. And I'm kind of using toddler examples here because of your daughter. It's using fun statements like that and fun energy like that creates that sense of lightheartedness, that play, which releases dopamine, which releases what we call happy chemicals. And so the brain is constantly like this teeter-totter that's looking for, where's the excitement coming from? Am I getting a lot of excitement from the fire and the correction and the telling me no and the I'm not listening and then I get grabbed kind of roughly? Or am I getting that excitement because someone's playing with me and they're creating excitement and praise in games?
Oh my gosh. I love all three of these. I love them so much because you can tell if you, well, just by the exercise that you did with me, if you put yourself in that same situation and sort of like turn the volume up, right? Like, I think it probably takes a lower volume on a toddler who's already a bit excitable, given that they haven't, their frontal lobe is like, a couple decades away at that point. Like they got some time to develop yet. But, you talk about taking an adult and putting us in that situation and imagining turning that volume up. Really, you're in the midst of a really terrible boss that you've worked for or something. And so you can see where some of these would definitely make the situation worse. Something that I want to hit on is I want to hit on a point that might be floating around in people's minds right now. And it's something that it is also kind of coming from the conversation that you and I had prior to us actually recording today. We talked about, in the situation with a kid, the reason why I think it becomes really tricky is that we've got two people's psychology going on at the same time. You've got your child's psychological state, everything happening with their brain, their dopamine or serotonin or any other crazy chemical their body wants to produce, all of that response. You've got all of their situation going on. You've also got your own situation going on. And I will be the first to say, when my daughter loses it, like, especially if it's seemingly out of nowhere and it's really surprising, it can be difficult to stop and think in that moment and get clear-headed. And this is one of those times where I think it's equally important for not only parents, and this is something I have to constantly remind myself, not only for parents to think about their kids' psychology, but to think about their own psychological state in some of the same preventive things that we're talking about with their kids. How can you give yourself those tools so that in that moment, you're more predisposed to react in a good way? Have you noticed that with clients that you're working with? So really, you're dealing with two, sometimes three brains here that are all sort of interacting with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that. Yeah. So it reminds me of the very last year I practiced speech therapy. That was in end of 2010. And then at the beginning of 2011, I started my certified parent coach practice. And I remember working with a 4-year-old who had autism, and I wanted Dad to come into the treatment sessions with us. And Dad said to me, Samantha, I really just need to sit in this lobby and close my eyes. And sometimes that would feel frustrating when I was a child professional, because I knew that if I only had an hour a week with a kid, I wanted parents to have a home program. So this is what all of us professionals were obsessed about. Like, can we get parents to do the home program? Like it was this big shiny thing, right? And I found out one day, Dad was looking kind of pale, and I just sat down next to him and asked him, I've seen you come in 8 weeks in a row and say, no, I didn't do it. No, I didn't do it. And you look really tired. What's going on? And he had leukemia. And so when he shared that with me, I realized that sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you just can't. You're not in a space where you can focus on making big changes for your family. And that's what helped me develop a lot more compassion for parents and understanding where they were at and needing to enter that space and not just look at it from this, cool, we have all this knowledge, let's do all these techniques space. It's let's take a baby step. Mm-hmm. And so for that baby step, and this is me giving you permission as well to just take a nugget away from this. What is one thing that would be impactful? And sometimes that nugget isn't to refrain from saying no. It's understanding, what does my everyday life look like? I had a mom of 6 kids who said, Samantha, I live in a world of so that. I get up at 5:30 a.m. so that I can walk on the treadmill for half an hour, so that I can shower at 6, so that I can get my kids up, so that I can feed them breakfast, so that I can get them on the bus. And on it went until we get to, they're home from school, so that I can help them with homework, so that we can have dinner, so that we can do the bedtime routine, so that at 9 o'clock at night, I can drop into bed exhausted, only to repeat it again the next day. What do we do if you're living in a world of so that? If we need to learn to hit the pause button, we need to find a moment where our body feels calm and we practice something that might not even be mindfulness, because sometimes that's a buzzword, but just practice a moment of pause. So I like to ask parents the question, if you could do one thing that took you 3 minutes that would feel good today, what would it be? Does anything pop into mind for you, April?
Oh man, several things. To highlight, even just one thing. I love, it makes me feel better to sit down and either write something. So maybe it's something that's on my mind that I wanted to get out. Maybe it's mind mapping. I call this self-indulgent journaling because I do not follow a journaling rubric, but I just do whatever it is it feels like my brain needs that day. And most days it feels like I need it more than once. And so a 3-minute little session would work.
Yeah. So if you do a self-indulgent writing session, what happens is the fire in your brain calms because you're doing something that feels good. So just like that teeter-totter balance I was talking about of fire and intensity in kids' brain versus like dopamine because things are happy and playful, it creates more resilience and bandwidth to handle anything that comes through your day. So if struggling to stop and think, if you find yourself yelling and reacting in moments, then consider what would feel good or what would be fun today that would only take 3 minutes. And it might be something as simple as when the kids are out the door, you actually sit down in your favorite chair and sip your coffee instead of gulping it, standing in front of the kitchen sink.
Guilty.
Right, exactly. And so this gives your nervous system an imprint of what calm and settling actually feels like.
I love that so much. And I love that you put the context of it being 3 minutes around it, because that not only removes maybe psychological barriers that we have where we, especially as women, I feel like we get into this space where we feel like we can't indulge ourselves, this space where we feel like we have to constantly give to other people and that we can't take those moments for ourselves. It's 3 minutes. We're not asking for an hour a day. We're not asking for anything massive. It is 3 minutes. So not only does it remove that barrier, but it also gives permission. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to be 3 minutes late for the next thing you do. Those 3 minutes round down.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
No one's going to notice those 3 minutes. So pausing for 3, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah. And sometimes I hear parents say, and you might be thinking this as you're listening right now, like, oh, but I live in a world of so that, or do you know what my health situation is? I have fibromyalgia. I have debilitating anxiety. I'm stressed out all the time. Do you understand that I feel like I'm a solo parent all the time and there's all these stressors in my life? And so I just want to throw in a little bit of personal information, which is that as a kid, I grew up feeling pretty stressed out. So I have a pretty typical Midwestern upbringing, family of 7, strict and conservative, and I had 4 siblings. And what happened was my dad had a hot temper. And so he was the primary breadwinner. He had to feed 7 mouths. And when he would come home and he was stressed out and had those moments where he would lose it, what I did as a kid is I went into flight mode. I'd go eek. And I'd want to blend into the wallpaper. And I learned, like, don't use your voice and don't speak up and don't be seen and just do what you need to so that dad doesn't get mad. And this is a really important, these moments have a profound impact on us, because what happened for me was when I was 6 years old, my mom would put bran in my cereal so I could go to the bathroom in the morning because my stomach was in knots. By the time I was a teenager, this sense of inner anxiety had escalated to the point where I would black out in the morning before high school. So I'd be like standing in front of the toaster, getting ready to make my peanut butter toast, and the room would go dark, and I would lay down on the linoleum floor until the darkness receded, and I would stand up and I'd make my toast and get ready for school. And I share this example because now I am a keynote speaker. So at this time, I travel around North America speaking on skills that calm challenging behaviors and techniques for parents, because I love you guys as much as I love the kids, to create a sense of peace and create a sense of fullness instead of the stress. And that 3-minute pause technique of doing something that feels good has been a contributing factor of what's worked me out of that debilitating anxiety.
That's wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's amazing insight into where some of the passion comes from and why, even why you would, name your blueprint, what you did, going from the situation that's very heated to something that's much more calm and something that's much more enjoyable and able to be handled.
Mm-hmm. Peace and enjoyment at home. That's what we stand for.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I know where you are online, but for other people who are now insanely curious and want to download the free download you talked about, get to know all the work that you're doing, where can people find you?
They can go to our website. It is www.mad2glad.com. So that's the number 2, glad.com. And we're on social media platforms, Facebook, Mad to Glad is easy. And then on Instagram, I am Samantha Moe. So I show some personal family examples of what we do to create more peace and enjoyment at home as well.
Oh my gosh, this has been wonderful. It has been incredibly insightful. I'm so excited about the work that you're doing. I know that my audience and everyone listening to this is going to get so much out of it. I really appreciate it. It's just been wonderful.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Before I let you go, though, I have one last question. And that is for your favorite motivational song. So we have a Spotify Power playlist, and we're compiling it based on songs that have been curated by all the amazing women that I'm interviewing. So I have to ask for your favorite motivational song.
The song is called This Is Me by Kesha. And even more incredible than just the song and the lyrics is the YouTube video of this song being recorded as one of the cornerstone songs for the movie The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
And it shows the artist literally stepping out from behind the music stand so that she could sing passionately and get the movie greenlit. So I recommend the song and the YouTube video to understand that when you are brave and when you stand out and you take a risk, great things can happen.
Amen. Oh my gosh, this has been wonderful. That is a perfect song, and I can't wait to add it.
Lovely. Thank you, April.
All right, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed that interview with the wonderful Samantha Moe. Before I dive into a few things that I want to highlight, I want to mention that on Samantha's website, she mentioned a free download. Please go sign up and get it. It's really, really good. I signed up for her email list after she and I spoke, and the download that you get about, avoiding some fires with your kids and avoiding these common things that add fuel to that fire, it's really valuable. So I think you're going to get a lot out of that. The other plug that I want to put in is that Samantha actually has an 8-week parent training program called Mad to Glad that you can get more information about on her website. She really has a great, well-researched, well-thought-out, comprehensive background. And I know for a lot of us, some of this can feel really overwhelming day to day. I'm about to have my second child, and I definitely can see how complex day-to-day life gets and how, we all want to do the best by our kids. So wanted to highlight that as another resource that Samantha has on her website. Okay, so a few things that I want to call out. Number one, at the very beginning of our interview, Samantha talked about how at the beginning of her career, she found herself in a situation where she had no idea what to do with a kid. The kid was having a meltdown on the floor, and she started immediately doing what a lot of us do. She started doubting her own abilities and her decisions to go into the field that she was in. And that is so common for us. But what I want to highlight is where she went from there. She realized that there were gaps in her knowledge and experience. She's only one person, right? And so what she did is she started reaching out to other people. She was open to learning. She realized that she had things that value that other people could give to her. And she reached out to people and asked for help. And that is such a huge gift that we can all give ourselves, is to be open to learning from other people. And this goes for parenting. This goes for entrepreneurship. This goes for almost any facet of life. Reaching out to other people to help fill in gaps that we might have can be such an incredible value to you. So I highly suggest you think about doing that and think about areas of your life where you feel uncertain. Who is it that you could reach out to that might be able to help fill that gap? Second, I would be crazy if I didn't re-highlight the 3 tips that Samantha gave us about how to create a better experience and more enjoyment at home as we parent our kids. Number 1, she talked about calming your own fire. So she mentioned how, when kids are being defiant or they have behavior that looks defiant, their brain is essentially on fire. She mentioned the notion of mirror neurons. Oh my gosh, Google that. It is so fascinating how they work. But those mirror neurons, if we allow ourselves to go right down that fiery rabbit hole with our kids, we add fuel to their fire. So calming our own fire first, super important. Number 2, becoming aware of what adds to the fire. I love that she said we're either adding to it or we're calming it. And so the tips that she mentioned that you can download for free on her website are so useful for avoiding making the situation worse. And last, making it exciting. I mean, this shouldn't have to all be so negative, right? Like if we can use praise in a way that helps fuel those good interactions with our kids, it just makes the whole thing much more enjoyable. So making it exciting for kids who are wired for excitement and energy, and using praise to do that is another great tip from Samantha. A couple more things I want to highlight. She mentioned living in the world of so that. Basically, sometimes you just can't. You just can't make the big change. And again, this goes for parenting. This goes for entrepreneurship. This goes for other goals, self-development, all of it. Sometimes you just are not in a place where you can make a big sweeping change. Be gentle with yourself and take the baby step if that's all you can take. If you go back and listen to some of my past episodes, I talk so often about just starting. That starting step does not have to be big, and oftentimes it isn't. Oftentimes it is a tiny step, but even those tiny steps add, and sometimes that's all you can do. Great. Do it and celebrate the fact that you're even taking a small step. I also love that she talked about in this time period where you just can't, hitting the pause button and finding a moment of pause where you can allow your body to feel calm and safe. So taking 3 minutes to do something that will make you feel good. Ask yourself, really, what will that 3-minute delay actually do? People aren't even going to notice it, but you are going to notice a huge difference in how you feel from that point on throughout your day. Give yourself that gift of those 3 minutes to reset. The last thing that I want to call out from this episode is Samantha's reinvention of herself. She opened up and shared her background of experiencing really debilitating anxiety as a result of, some of the things that she encountered when she was a kid. That is incredible adversity, and that can make it very difficult for you to succeed in the type of career that Samantha's in. But she did the hard work. She asked for help. I know for a fact from conversations with her that she works with a number of people to help get her to the place where she can be a keynote speaker and use her voice to help other people. And that is not something that's easy for people when they experience anxiety in the way that Samantha did. So whatever those barriers might be for you, whatever difficulty you might have, if there is a way that you can start to reinvent yourself, take a small step, reach out to someone who might be able to help you, start to work on those pieces of yourself that you want to improve. Reinvention is absolutely possible, and it can make such a huge difference in your experience and how you experience your day-to-day life.
Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.